I'm Kevin. This is Sports Lab 100. Today's chapter is Browns at Oilers, December 3rd, 1981. This is Week 14, 1981, Cleveland at Houston. Thursday night in the Dome. Two AFC Central teams, both 5-8, and both 1 year removed from being much more interesting. And that's the hook. In 1980, the Browns were the cardiac kids. Brian Sipe was the NFL's MVP. Sam Rutigliano was Coach of the Year. Cleveland won the AFC Central, then lost the divisional playoff to Oakland on Red Right 88. One pass in the end zone, one interception, and one season frozen. Forever. Houston had its own hangover. The Oilers had been Love You Blue. Bum Phillips, Earl Campbell, the Astrodome, and a city that believed this team was going to punch right through Pittsburgh and reach the Super Bowl. They never did. After the 1980 season, Bud Adams fired Bum Phillips. Ed Biles took over. So this isn't just two bad teams playing out the string. This is two teams dealing with the morning after. The Browns still had Sipe, Ozzie Newsome, Mike Pruitt, and enough leftover 1980 credibility to be dangerous. The Oilers still had Earl Campbell, Ken Stabler, Dave Casper, and enough leftover Love Your Blue energy to make the Astrodome feel like it was supposed to matter. But the standings were telling the truth. The Browns had the residue of 1980, but not the magic. The Oilers had the residue of Love You Blue, but not the same engine. And the funny thing is, if you trace the franchise bloodlines forward, this is kind of Titans-Ravens. Officially, the sentence needs an asterisk. The Houston Oilers were easy. They became the Tennessee Oilers, then the Tennessee Titans. Same line, same family, same trunk. The Brown side is messier. Officially, the Cleveland Browns' history stayed in Cleveland. The name, colors, records, and franchise identity were preserved for the Browns team that returned in 1999. So officially, this is not Ravens history. But organizationally, that old Browns operation moved to Baltimore in 1996. Art Modell's football team became the Baltimore Ravens. The players and football side machinery went that direction, even though the Browns' identity stayed in Cleveland. So this chapter is not officially Titans versus Ravens. But if you're tracing football DNA instead of record book identity, that's what's hiding under the uniforms. Now the game. It started like a field position argument. Cleveland struck first, but not loudly. Matt Barr hit an 18-yard field goal, and the Browns led 3-0. Houston answered with Tony Fritsch from 32 yards, and after one quarter, it was tied 3-3. That was the tone, not fireworks. It wasn't a track meet. More like two old division rivals trying to remember they used to be dangerous. In the second quarter, Cleveland moved back in front. Barr hit again, this time from 19 yards, and the Browns took a 6-3 advantage into halftime. 6-3, indoors, national TV, with all that franchise history and all those bruises sitting in the room. That score tells you a lot. Cleveland was doing more of the moving, but Houston was surviving. The Browns were getting drives. They were getting Mike Pruitt involved. They were making the Oilers defend, but they were turning possessions into field goals instead of touchdowns. And that's how you let a damaged team stay attached to you. Houston needed one quarter, not a full night. The third quarter flipped the game. Ken Stabler started for the Oilers, but Gifford Nielsen, remember him? I don't. He made the throw that changed everything. He hit Dave Casper for a 30-yard touchdown, and Houston had its first lead, 10-6. There's a lot sitting inside that touchdown. Casper was another old name in a game full of old names. Houston was still trying to squeeze useful football out of a roster that still had star power, but no longer had the same force. For one third-quarter snap, it worked. Then Houston leaned on the image that still meant something. Earl Campbell scored from the 1-yard line. Tony Fritsch kicks the extra point, and the Oilers lead 17-6. Campbell's final number, they're not mythology, 15 carries, 31 yards. It's not Earl Campbell running through doors and through people. It's not the NFL Films version. But 1 yard near the goal line is still 1 yard near the goal line, and Houston still had Earl Campbell for that. The Oilers led 17-6 after three quarters. That was the decisive stretch. 14 points in the third, just one field goal in the other three quarters. Cleveland came back and made it uncomfortable later. In the fourth quarter, Cleo Miller scored from the 1. Matt Barr added the point. Now it was 17-13. The Browns were within 1 touchdown. They had time, and they had Brian Sipe. They had Mike Pruitt doing everything he could to drag them home. Pruitt was the best offensive player on the field. He carried 32 times for 155 yards and caught 7 passes for 58 more. That's a workhorse game. That's a running back carrying a team that's trying not to admit the magic's gone. But Cleveland couldn't finish. Sipe completed 21 of 31 for 206 yards. Looks clean, but the damaging part, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Houston didn't dominate him. They interrupted him. Bill Kay and Mike Renfelt picked him off once each. The Oilers didn't win because they controlled the whole game. They won because they owned the right moments. And the final score is Oilers 17, Browns 13. The box score is almost too perfect for what this game is. Cleveland rushed for 190 yards and lost. Houston's quarterbacks combined for only 134 passing yards and won. Campbell scored, but didn't control the game. Sipe completed 2/3 of his passes, but never found the end zone. Mike Pruitt was excellent, but Cleveland kept turning good drives into small rewards. And that's how a 5-8 team becomes 5-9. For Houston, the win made the Oilers 6-8. It stopped a slide, at least briefly. They'd started the season 4-2, then started losing their shape. This game gave them a sweep of Cleveland and one more AFC Central win in a year where the old certainty was disappearing. They would lose at San Francisco the next week, then close by beating Pittsburgh, finishing 7-9. That sounds respectable until you remember what Houston had been. This team was only 2 years removed from back-to-back AFC Championship game appearances. Bum was gone. Campbell was still great, but he was wearing down. The Astrodome still had echoes. But echoes aren't the same thing as momentum. The Oilers weren't yet a crater, but this was the end of the afterglow. In 1982, they fell to 1-8 in the strike season. By 83, Ed Biles was gone. The Warren Moon era was still years away. And for Cleveland, this loss made them 5-9. They lost to the Jets by 1, then lost badly at Seattle, and finished 5-11. The weird part is that the 1981 Browns were bad, but they weren't empty. They beat Cincinnati in September, and they beat San Francisco in November. So this 5-11 Browns team beat both teams that later played in Super Bowl 16. It also explains the frustration. Cleveland wasn't helpless. They were broken in very specific ways. The 1980 Browns had lived on the edge and kept landing upright. The 1981 Browns still lived on the edge, but now they kept falling off. The Cardiac Kids didn't disappear in one afternoon. They just stopped winning the games that made the nickname stick. And that's why Brown Oilers, December 3rd, 1981, is worth keeping. Not because it was a classic. It wasn't. It was a leftover. But leftovers can tell you exactly what happened to the feast. Browns and Oilers, future Ravens, future Titans. If you squint and accept the asterisk, Brian Sipe trying to keep Cleveland alive. Earl Campbell getting 1 yard when Houston needed 1 yard. Mike Pruitt running wild in a losing effort, Houston doing less overall, but still more when the game tilted. Oilers 17, Browns 13. 2 5-8 teams carrying the names and the bruises of better seasons. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.